Bullshit.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm Dave Mastovich, CEO of Massolutions, the world's only no bullshit marketing firm. This is another special episode from the West Coast. Today, I'm fortunate to talk with Lisa Rios, the CEO of the LDI Group. She's also a VISTAGE chair, and her work on leadership and organizational culture and management and productivity changes lives of the people she works with and grows their companies 2, 3, 10x. So we're fortunate to have Lisa Rios on the show. Lisa, welcome to the No BS Marketing Show.
Thank you.
Ami Maljud and Kyle Smart of Cucamonga Valley Medical Group have both been on the show. And I told you how interesting it was when I opened the show with them and said this question. So now you're getting the chance to tell your story. It's talk about your career path, your journey.
My career path and my journey has been interesting. I think that my career path started early. I think I was, maybe 11 years old when I started working. And so in the restaurant business. And then also my mom, she was a small-time entrepreneur selling clothing, and so I worked with her selling clothes. And then my dad, who was an entrepreneur with a trucking business, and then working with him. So I started young and worked throughout, learned what worked and what didn't work. Got fired a couple of times along the way, and then decided to go to college and kind of just fell into what it is that I do today. I guess you can say that I've been through the school of hard knocks. It's funny because I grew up in the building industry, and growing up in an environment that back then was very dominated by men, I learned a lot from them. And I learned how to be a relatively successful businesswoman. And it taught me a lot. I had the opportunity to do business overseas in some very male-dominated countries, and they taught me a lot. And so I learned a lot about culture. I learned a lot about how to respect other cultures, and whether I'm a man or a woman, or it doesn't matter whether it's a man or a woman, that we all have this level of respect for one another and the value that we bring to the table. So fast forward, I went to school my entire career because I was always doing homework in hotel rooms on business trips, or on airlines, on flights to wherever. And so I actually didn't finish really formalizing my education till probably a couple of years ago. And I've been in school this whole time, and it's funny because every time I would learn something, I'm like, oh my God, see, I went through the school of hard knocks. So that's what I was doing wrong. Oh, okay, this is the formal way of doing it. But anyway, back to, I landed here, this is where I am, and because of the school of hard knocks and the various opportunities that were presented to me, I've been able to work in companies that have grown over 500% in a 5-year period, and really be in some leadership roles that have challenged me to the core and have taught me a lot of lessons.
Let's go back. As a 10, 11, 12-year-old, you said you started working in restaurants, and then with your mom's business and your dad's business. So you're way back then working, child labor laws be damned.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that first job. What was the actual first job?
I worked for a restaurant. I worked for a Mexican restaurant in the South, in a little town in the South called Atlanta, Texas. And I was serving food, washing dishes, cleaning tables and cleaning floors.
So you learn discipline
Very young.
at a very young age and attention
Yeah.
to detail because you want to show them that the young person can handle it, and you were then counted on.
Yeah, yeah. And then when I came to California, I ended up working for this lady, Barbara Matthews, and I'll never forget her. And she taught me that we used to have to reconcile pools, distribution pools for the citrus industry. I was in the citrus industry for several years. And it was all done manual at the time. And she would make me look for 1 penny. If we were off a penny with $1 million, I'd have to find that penny. And I searched and searched and searched that penny. So I actually learned really early on how to find clerical errors, financial errors, those types of things and stuff. She really taught me the value of discipline. That was huge. In the company that I worked with, where we grew over 500% in 5 years, that was run, the owners were Canadian, and it was Marlon and Julian Carlson, and some of the things that they taught me was the true spirit of entrepreneurship, because they allowed me to do whatever I needed to do to make it happen and didn't put me in a box. And they taught me what entrepreneurship was about, what leadership was about. And so even though we all had competing priorities, I had the ability to learn from them, because they had a way of teaching me and everyone that worked with them how to buy in to their vision, how to take ownership of what I was responsible for. And it was okay to make a mistake. It was okay to learn from that, and it just taught me a lot. And that was probably one of the most challenging things too, because it also taught me about how to value the people, my followership. It taught me how to value who they are, and be able to really tap into the people's strengths. You know, our followership, sometimes we just demand so many things of our team, and what I learned there was they're human, and they have feelings and emotions and aspirations and purpose and meaning that they want to gain from. And so I learned how to look at myself and really tap into what they bring to the table. It was pretty humbling, but it was good.
Is that the position you had when you were flying all over at a young age?
Yes. I was in my late 20s.
So let me go back even farther. So you also said your dad had a trucking business, which afforded you the opportunity to be in a male-dominated industry, which you still learned a tremendous amount from them. Tell me about that.
My dad being in the trucking industry, one of the things that I learned from him was just sheer hard work. Just how much work it takes to run a business, how much liability he took on, and the level of stress that comes along with that, and responsibility. So I worked in the construction industry, in the building products industry. That was a very male-dominated industry, and that was after my dad. And so just growing up in that industry was huge. In the building products industry, I worked for a lady, Charlie Crooks, and one of the things, and she was the CMO for the building products group that I worked with. And one of the things that she taught me in the industry, because she was older than me, and she'd been in the building products industry quite a while, and I admired her because she just had this command presence, and she could always look at everyone at eye level. And one of the things that she taught me when we were in Australia doing business, she said to me, never take yourself too seriously. Make sure that you can always laugh at yourself, and don't ever take yourself too seriously. When you take yourself too seriously, then you're going to fall and have faux pas and that type of thing. So
You've already rattled off 4 or 5 key influencers in your life, and this show is about leadership and communication. And I think that you are someone that takes that very seriously because of all that you've learned from others. Talk about that for a minute, because I know I constantly try to give back, because I feel I had 3 or 4 super mentors. It was never formal. They never said I'm going to be your mentor, but I had 3 or 4 people that just really influenced my life, and in addition to my parents, and they gave me these values and expertise, and I always am constantly trying to give that back and to give people time. It sounds like you're the same way. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's always easy to say, I would never ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't be able to do myself. I hear that a lot. And, and one of the things, if certainly if I'm going to ask my clients to do anything, I truly evaluate whether I'm even able to do it myself. And I take full responsibility if I'm not, and I don't ever recommend anything that I won't. I even share with clients, I'm going to share something with you. If, I would encourage you to do this. I still haven't gotten there, so let me know if it works. Okay? If it works, then I may try it, right? Yeah. And so, but I let them know, heck, I haven't even accomplished this, but I believe you can get there. Yes. If you get there sooner than I do, then all the better. Yes. Okay. And so I think that's a philosophy that's important for me, because there's a level of authenticity and vulnerability that I have to be honest with myself if I want anyone to be transparent and authentic and honest with me. So that's really critical for me. The other thing that I think that I've learned and I work a lot at is really working with individuals to understand when they've been triggered, to learn how to own their triggered state, and learn how to evaluate their thinking and how they're thinking about things. If we can become self-aware of our triggered states and understand what's triggering us, why is it triggering us, and become self-aware. And here's the difficult thing. It's becoming self-aware in the moment during that triggered state. That's the hard part. That I've learned how to do, and I learned how to do that with a huge lesson. And I'll get back to that in just a second. But if we can become self-aware, then we have the power of choice, the ability to choose to either do behavior that's going to have a positive outcome and impact, because for every decision or every choice we make, there are impacts, unintended consequences that happen, and sometimes we don't think through any of those consequences. So if I can influence others to be able to understand what triggers them and understand how to make course corrections in the moment, then that's beautiful. I had to do that. One of the biggest lessons I learned was I treated, I grew in a company that grew over 500%. I was leading teams. I was responsible for a lot of results, a lot of numbers. We had to be profitable. We had to be efficient. All the things that all entrepreneurs are faced with. And so I led with a heavy hand. And people knew that I expected results, and I demanded excellence. And it was interesting, though, when I would walk in a room and everybody would kind of go away. And I knew I took a shower that morning, right? Right. So I know I didn't smell, but I went to the CEO and I said, you know what, something's not right. And I was a VISTAGE member at the time. It wasn't called VISTAGE then, it was called Tech. I'll never forget, this gal goes in there, oh, I did this great thing. I went through this 360. It taught me a lot. I had no clue what she was talking about at the time. I was really young. And so I said to my CEO, I said, hey, I want to do this. This gal at the VISTAGE Group, at Tech, she said this, and I want to do it as well. I said, he says, why? And he says, well, I just got this gut feeling. I walk in, people walk away. They're not really engaging me with they're working on things and stuff, but I just have this gut feeling something isn't right. So they proceeded to send out an assessment to all of these people, all my direct reports, all of these people, even my ex-husband. And they all got to share how they saw me as a leader. And oh my gosh, it was the worst thing I went through. And, I treated people like machines. I wasn't very nice. I didn't treat them as they were humans. They were means to end, the whole thing. And it was very, very humbling. And I sat with all of them and apologized to every one of them, because it's not who I am. It's not how I'm wired. And so I apologized to every one of them, and I made a commitment to them that I was going to change behavior. And when we do that, people say, "Oh yeah, right, sure you are," And I went to a couple of my direct reports, and I said to them, when I start doing X, Y, Z, whatever it is, give me the stink eye, kick me under the table, I don't care what you do. Okay, just bring it to my attention right then in the moment that I am starting to demonstrate that behavior again. And I made a commitment to them that I wouldn't, admonish them in any way, that I would listen to them. And that's what they did. And so then, I think it was probably about 14 months later, they did another survey to see if I had any improvements. And that's the most improvement this organization had seen in somebody change behavior. And so that was probably my proudest moment of growth as an individual,
Yes.
as a leader, as a mentor, as a coach. And it was the most humbling experience I'd ever been through.
That's Lisa Rios of the LDI Group. She's CEO there. She's telling us a lot of stories about people that have impacted her, their leadership, how it's honed her style and her leadership approach, and then gave that tremendous example about going through the 360 process, which is 360-degree feedback, and how difficult and challenging that is to hear from people lateral to you, people above you, and people below you. And when you hear some similarities like you did, you knew you had to change, and you made great change. Tell us how you moved along towards LDI.
It's interesting. I was a tech member for 8 years, VISTAGE member, for I guess almost 8 years. And I had the opportunity to work with entrepreneurs, CEOs, and bring together these think tanks, and discovered that I was actually very good at it. And I started to have a lot of success in it and work with some just phenomenal entrepreneurs. Was able to share a lot of the knowledge, a lot of the experience and best practices that I'd been through with them, and then continued to get referrals and folks wanting to work with me. And I think one of the things that makes it interesting is that I do have a strong financial acumen, and then I also understand business really well. I worked in so many different facets of the business, and so it's just enabled me to look at business from a very strategic perspective. So as my VISTAGE practice continued to grow, I was getting a lot of other requests from other individuals that had heard about me and were referring me. And so then I started to develop a private client base other than VISTAGE, and really started to see the need for organizational alignment and more around execution and strategic alignment and execution. And so I've been able to leverage the School of Hard Knocks that I've been through and really work with entrepreneurs that are growing, having fast growth, and really bringing together everything that I bring to the table, from learning how to work in other cultures, being able to understand what it's like to sit in that seat, being on the hot seat, knowing what it's like to to be there and have the demands and the competing priorities that we all have when we're running businesses, and being able to communicate that effectively, bring that all to the table, not just from books and reading books, but actually doing it has proved to be quite fruitful in the business that we're in. And so now it's working with companies on around organizational structure and alignment, and we continue to grow.
You're making an impact multiple ways, and one way I find really interesting is having the chance to know some of your clients. I've heard that there's phrases that they use that they call them Lisa-isms, because you're talking about these types of ideas and you summarize them in a succinct way that's memorable. So what are some of your favorite Lisa-isms that they're calling Lisa-isms?
I think some of the biggest things that I say to clients a lot, is one of the things that I do is I measure results, and accountability is huge for me. I think a lot of the success that we have gained is because we do track results, and we want to make sure that our clients are successful, so we measure a lot of things. And as we go through this, some of the things that I do share with folks is, I don't know, some of the Lisa-isms, I don't know, let me think of some. What message are you trying to send? Are there mixed messages? How is this landing on you? What's the result? Quantify that for me. How are you going to measure it? And quantify that for me is a huge one. So I get accused of holding people accountable with a velvet hammer, I mean, just those types of things. But at the end of the day, they look at the results, and they see the changes in their behavior, and they see the changes in their team and the way they're executing. There's times where clients will look at me and say, I can't actually believe that we actually made this happen, that our team actually is working together. To see that, that's what continues to push me to do, not so much push me, but continue to, the passion behind what I do is being able to see a client look at me and say, I can't believe we've actually made it this far, and that we're actually doing this well. Not just from the CEOs, but from the team themselves. So I don't know if I answered those Lisa-isms.
Yes.
But,
well, you were also pretty vulnerable in telling the story about the 360-degree feedback, but it is my requirement, since it's the No BS Marketing Show, to ask you for an example of when you were a BSer, a tough boss, a difficult employee. Maybe you weren't as accountable as you teach people to be. When were you a BSer? What did you do to fix it that might help our audience?
I think, and I still work on this today. I go back to the triggered state. One of the things that I use a lot is the Cartman drama triangle. And that's that any of us, when we're triggered, we're not the best version of ourselves. We either become a victim, or we become a persecutor, or we become a rescuer. And it's so funny because I was teaching at the university the other night, and I was sharing with them that I had gotten triggered in a meeting with a client. And I was teaching them about the Cartman drama triangle. And I said I was triggered. And I said, I got quiet. I didn't say anything the entire meeting. And I just stayed quiet. And in my thoughts were bouncing from victim to persecutor to victim to persecutor. And they would engage me back into the conversation and ask me a question, and I would answer it very calm, very coolly. And at that point, I recognized, Lisa, you're in the drama triangle. How can you look at this differently? Get yourself out of the drama triangle. And after the meeting ended, I reached out and I took personal responsibility for being in the drama triangle and recognizing that we all have to work on this, and it's really understanding when are we playing the victim, when are we playing the persecutor, and when are we rescuing? Because at any time, we're probably bouncing through each of those different roles and not realizing it, and just getting out of there is huge.
So how do you help someone start to figure out when they're triggered? What do they do to know when they're triggered? I mean, I think we all have a general idea, but
I think everybody, one of the things when we get triggered, some of us get flushed with red, some of us get butterflies in our stomach, some of us can feel, and there's those physiological changes that occur in our bodies when we get triggered. I think that if we are coming from a primary stance of defensiveness and defending, you're triggered. If you're having to defend your ego, you're triggered. And so it's recognizing that I'm coming from a stance of being defensive. So there's something going on here. I'm making it now about myself rather than whatever this discussion is all about. So recognizing that is important. If you find yourself defending, you're triggered.
Talk about the rescuing one.
The rescuer, oh my goodness, that's the person who says, you know what, I'll fix it, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it, it's not your fault, I'll fix it for you. So we're always, those people are, when we're triggered at that point, rather than have that as a teachable moment and show them how to do it, we want to go and rescue that person and do the work for them. And then we become heavily burdened, and then we become so heavily burdened because we've got the weight of everybody's shoulders on our shoulders. We have the weight of everyone's world on our shoulders, in other words. So the rescuer just goes and tries to essentially take on everybody's problems instead of people owning their own responsibilities. So we try to take on everybody else's responsibility.
And the drama triangle, the whole concept.
It's the Cartman drama triangle.
Yeah, so tell me about that. Where did you get exposed to that?
Through my coaching practice, just ongoing, continuing and learning, just continuing as I continue to educate myself. And it's just something that I've incorporated over several years, and just through ongoing learning. Some of that formal education that that's what I do. I get it now. Okay. So
that's really good insight. I think it's definitely something any listener can work on. What's the one thing that LDI does that is unique and gives you your competitive advantage?
I think one of the things that we do is we look at quantifiable metrics, and we align metrics with behaviors. And along the way, we develop very trusting relationships, long-standing relationships, and it's accountability on both parts. Not only is there accountability with clients, but there's accountability with us also. I think that if you were to speak to any of our clients, they would probably share with you that they know that I take a deep interest in what it is that they're doing and how they're going to market, what their growth strategy is, what their vision is, what their dreams are, what they're trying to achieve. And so we look at that entire package and say, oh, it's not a one-size-fits-all, that's for sure. But we definitely work on culture, and we definitely work on aligning everyone within the organization. And I think that's unique, and I think the financial acumen piece is quite unique when we're talking about organizational leadership.
What's a tool that you use personally that might help our audience? It could be something that's an app, it could be something you do every day that's using some sort of tool like a contact management system. It could, what's a tool that you think could help our listeners?
When we track goals, we track objectives, we track strategic objectives. I even track them, and I have our organizational objectives and what we intend to achieve this year, and I track whether we're hitting the target or not. Are we on target to meet it? We're not going to hit it, or what are the course corrections that we need to take? I think that's one of the things I do, and it's something simple. I mean, I use an Excel spreadsheet essentially just to do that, but I think keeping the goals in front of us is really important. I think the other thing that I do with my team is definitely align. We have an alignment meeting. Some people call that staff meetings. Some people call that, management meetings. I call it alignment. And the reason I call it alignment is because it's so important that I know who's on first, who's on second, who's on third, and who's at bat. And so if we're all aligned, then I know that we're getting things done. So,
Was there anything you thought I'd ask you that I didn't?
I thought that you would ask me about my two little dogs, and you didn't. No,
Well, tell us about them. Tell us about them. What are their names?
Chico and Brownie.
How old are they?
Oh my goodness. Chico is probably 10 years old now, isn't he? And Brownie is probably about 7. And they are just great little pets. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add about Chico, Brownie, LDI, VISTAGE?
Well, I've been around the VISTAGE community, oh my goodness, 20-something years now. And it's a phenomenal community. It really is the best kept secret. If any entrepreneur has the opportunity to sit in a group think tank and be able to tap into the collective wisdom in the room and know that everyone there is there because they're sharpening their saw and they're investing in themselves and they really want to learn from one another, really challenge each other, have those tough discussions, because it really is lonely at the top. And so my VISTAGE groups are thriving. There are I've seen multi-millionaires be grown in those groups. I've seen massive, major decisions made that have impacted entrepreneurs in just so many phenomenal, positive ways. So that's a great thing. The other thing now about leadership, LDI, the LDI Group, Leadership Dimensions, I think one of the biggest things that we're very proud of and that we continue to grow through referrals is because of the results that we achieve, the quantifiable results that we achieve for our clients. I think the results and the behaviors aligned is phenomenal. I think that's what's really cool about what we do, is that soft skills, they always say soft skills are so hard to measure, but at LDI we've learned how to measure those things and how to quantify them and how to really help people get there and achieve them and look at themselves and say, wow, I didn't believe I could actually do this. That's what's really cool about the LDI Group.
We'll end it on that. Thank you for being on the No BS Marketing Show, Lisa.
Okay. Thank you.
And to our audience, our loyal No BSers, thank you for listening to the show. Remember to sign up for your weekly No BS marketing fix by going to massolutions.biz, B-I-Z. Also, take the time to give us a review. Your thoughts and feedback help to drive the company. The first 10 people that give us the review online will receive a no bullshit button, which has my voice on it. They are collector's items. Remember, ask yourself what's the big idea and build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.